Hi guys, my name is Jen Witt and I am head of programmatic for Match Media. So my team is responsible for programmatically monetizing all of the Match Group's dating brands. So like a lot of you, I spend my entire day chasing the perfect PMP, the PMP that scales, the PMP that is great for the advertiser and great for my users. And I struggle with this sometimes. I think we all have a little bit of collective frustration that we feel around getting PMPs to work. And I have discovered that my struggle is not unlike that of this woman, Carrie Bradshaw, right? Aside from the obvious resemblance that makes us practically twins, I've kind of figured out that we have a lot in common. We're both single New Yorkers, we both have fantastic friends, we both spend about 150% of our income on shoes, and most importantly, we are both looking for love, right? I'm looking for my PMP soulmate that makes me truly believe programmatic advertising is going to be the thing that brings us all of those television budgets. But unlike Carrie, I live in the world of online dating, right? It consumes my life not personally, but professionally, because I'm monetizing all of these dating sites. And I think Carrie could have benefited from a little bit of automation as well. And when you really think about it, all of the automation and tools that programmatic advertising are bringing to premium advertising are kind of the same paradigm shift that online dating brought to traditional dating. You know, you don't have those premium sales teams necessarily spending a lot of time in bars, wooing their agency clients. It is a lot like dating. So what that means is I need to know what my true PMP love looks like before I put on my online dating profile, right? Before I use all of those automated programmatic tools to try to find the perfect PMP. And the first thing is there needs to be a mutually beneficial partnership, right? I think a lot of us hear the word PMP, it's this huge buzzword. Somebody's making money off of it, why not us? Let's just start one. Let's find the low-hanging fruit and let's do it. And that often leads to one-sided relationships, right? Where the advertiser feels like they've put in a lot of work and then they don't get scale from the inventory side, or vice versa. The publisher puts in a lot of work and they don't see a lot of demand push through. So it's important that when we're doing these things, we're making the same commitment that we would make for a premium deal, right? We're all in and everybody is invested in making this work. The product appeals to your users and works for the advertiser, right? This is the basics of advertising. Why would you do anything else in a PMP situation? But more importantly, why are you doing a PMP instead of just buying this in the open auction? You need to make sure that it makes sense to do that in this case. It's not just about getting higher prices. It's not just about being the first look. It's about making sure that the way that you're transacting makes sense. Both teams understand each other's needs and you set expectations. We talked about this a little bit in the publisher town hall where we've kind of left the human element out of programmatic a little bit. And all of these tools should be helping us find each other to form relationships and have great partnerships. They shouldn't be so that we're not having any conversations, right? We still need to have the conversation where, as a publisher, I understand what your advertiser's attribution model is. And you as an advertiser know what I can do as a publisher to optimize and to help your campaign. We should still be scheduling those pre-launch calls, those post-launch calls, all of those things that we've done for years. Just because we have automated tools now doesn't mean we should be leaving that behind. Effective communication is the basis of every successful relationship. And oftentimes there are so many people involved in a PMP transaction, whether it's a preferred dealer or a private auction, we don't necessarily know who all of those people are. Agencies and agency trading desks are structured the way that they are for a reason, but maybe I just have one contact at a trading desk. I don't know anybody at the brand and I don't know anybody at the DSP. So when there's an issue, I have no idea if I'm actually talking to that right person. It's important that we communicate effectively and we know that we're communicating with the right person to make sure that these deals work. And then finally, we'd all like to make some money, right? That's the whole point of PMPs, is that they scale. I think most people in this room have probably had the experience where they set one up and it made $47, right? And that's not worth anybody's time and money. That's not what we're trying to do. So keeping all of that in mind, how do you go about just forming the basis of these relationships, right? We all thought it was going to be really different than, so-called premium advertising. We had all of these different ways we were meeting each other and trying to set up PMPs. And the first one, of course, summits like this. You're all at the Digiday Programmatic Summit. You all probably do something with programmatic. As an industry, we don't really lack the capability to throw fantastic parties. I feel like I'm invited to something every single week. So there's really no lack of opportunity to meet the people who are doing programmatic. But again, it's about meeting everyone everywhere in the chain. You need to have that contact at the brand, at the trading desk, at the DSP, and at the publisher to make sure everything is transacting successfully. Real collateral. I definitely feel like on the publishing side, this is something that we didn't necessarily expect we'd have to do with programmatic, right? We were just set up an AdX and we thought, oh, I'm gonna get all these inbound offers. I want to run a PMP with you, right? We weren't gonna have to put any work into it, which is obviously categorically false. So having real collateral is important because when I talk to my friends on the buy side, they said their #1 problem was discovering brand safe, transparent sites to run PMPs on, right? This is still a huge problem for them, so let's make it as easy as possible. Let's put all of our differentiators in one place, just like we used to, and give it to them so they have that on hand. SSPs are your matchmakers, right? Every SSP in this room wants you to do a PMP in their system, right? Whether you're talking to PubMatic, Rubicon, Google, OpenX, or AdTech Marketplace, everybody is incentivized to help you, and they all have sell-side and buy-side teams. They would be happy to put you in contact with each other and make sure you can successfully run a PMP. Automated tools, right? The whole basis of programmatic. I think that vendors have really heard the message loud and clear from the buy side that the automated tools that existed didn't give them enough information because discovery is so hard for them. You've got Rubicon that just made massive upgrades to their seller storefront, and you've got Google that's released publisher profiles, right? And these tools are great, but they're only as great as publishers help them be, right? It's up to us as publishers to give really rich, detailed information to all of these portals so that the buy side can easily see it and make great decisions on who they want to form a partnership with. So, all right, putting yourself out there. This is probably not so much for the people in this room, but for those publishers who have a one-man show, right? And I know there's a couple of you here. There's one person dealing with programmatic. They might have a yield background or an ad ops background. They've been an internally facing employee for their entire career. They don't necessarily know how to leverage their network. And I think I'm pretty safe in saying there's no more than 3 degrees of separation between anybody in this industry. Everybody in this industry knows someone who knows someone. So if you have a one-man shop, leverage your own network. You would be surprised who you know that can put you in contact with the right person to form a fantastic partnership. All right, so you've both swiped right and you have found your PMP match. This is the one. It's gonna restore your faith in advertising. So you set up a bunch of deal IDs, and then you get this big fat 0, right? This is a real screenshot. I didn't even make this up. You set up a bunch of deal IDs and you have $0 running through, or $27 or $35. Whatever it is not what you signed up for, right? So just what happened? What happened? There are a lot of things that could have happened, but let's start with the ones that are not technical, right? Let's start with the one-sided relationships that we all kind of talked about. You know, as a publisher, I get really excited sometimes when I see a great brand and I think they're interested and their agency trading desk accepted my PMP deal, and then nothing happens. I probably wasn't talking to the right person, right? That's what happens a lot of the time, is I was able to talk to the person who could approve a deal, but I wasn't talking to the person who actually put demand into that deal. And I know the exact same thing happens on the buy side, right? You have that same experience where you're super excited, you got this great publisher, you think you're going to be on the homepage, and then you run 3 whole impressions, right? Because they didn't necessarily do their due diligence and figure out if there was enough inventory for you to run, because we're not in a guaranteed environment, but at the same time, nobody would be setting up PMPs if they believed that they would never run any impressions. So knowing who the right person to talk to is super critical. And then there are all the technical reasons why something could go wrong, and we're gonna go through my top favorites here. You know, I think that there's a lot of trafficking knowledge out there that the programmatic people are not necessarily using. A lot of us in the programmatic space think, well, it's on in Rubicon, so it should be going, right? Go. Why are there no impressions? Maybe you had to do some modification to the trafficking in your system, right? So it may sound funny when I say, did you turn the campaign on? But when I talked to Google, they said that 5% of the time something is escalated to them, it's because there was something wrong with the campaign being turned on. Did you exchange the correct deal IDs? And we all know the pain that's associated with this. You've got like these 20-character long deal IDs. Sometimes they're called tokens, sometimes they're called IDs, and you have to exchange them via email. So it can be kind of a pain, but it's important, especially if you're going to escalate an issue, that you exchange them correctly. On the sell side, I can say that oftentimes it is confusing knowing which seat to select in a PMP situation, because you've got a lot of buy-side partners using multiple DSPs, and it's easy to select the wrong seat, and that gets your deal off track from the beginning. Making sure you're choosing appropriate targeting, right? In Google on the buy side, it's very easy to choose the domain level instead of the parent level. That can mess up your campaign from the start. Making sure that your bid prices are right for the bid floors, right? I'm a publisher, I got together with an advertiser and we agreed on $4, right? So I set my floor at $4. The partner's bidding at $4, but what they don't know is there's some kind of intermediary in between taking out some kind of fee. Or maybe somebody knows, but it wasn't the person who set up the deal, right? So their bid is actually coming through as $3.50, that's falling below my $4 floor, and we're not showing any impressions, right? It's important to have transparency into all of the fees that might be affecting your bid or floor price. Blacklists, right? There are very legitimate reasons why a publisher could be on an advertiser's blacklist that are not bad, right? Maybe it was optimized out of a campaign. Maybe an advertiser is on a publisher's blacklist because that advertiser was doing a direct buy 2 years ago and you didn't want them coming in through the open exchange and somebody just kind of forgot to take them off the blacklist later. I've actually seen that happen a couple of times, and that's the reason why there were no transactions coming through. Creative approval. As publishers, we have creative specs that we expect everybody to follow, but we might have more restrictive creative approvals for the open exchange, right? Because we've had bad experiences with expandable sneaking through and whatnot in the past. Make sure nothing like that is blocking your ability to transact. Again, there could be a technology that's blocked, a DMP, an ad server, something else going on in the background that you've blocked in the exchange, and now it's affecting your PMPs. Make sure that's not an issue. And then finally, different taxonomies and different systems can cause a lot of confusion. I think the most famous example is in Rubicon, a preferred deal is something different than it is in Google, right? How much more confusing can it get than that, right? We can't even use the same names, and I'm not saying that Google or Rubicon is doing anything wrong. Everybody has their branding process that they've used. But we need to make sure when we're transacting that we're choosing the correct ones, so somebody isn't thinking it's the Google definition, but they're in Rubicon and picking the Rubicon definition, and that's creating an issue. A lot of times we actually have campaigns that do turn on, but again, they run $52. So all of the trafficking things that you would look at to try to increase pacing on a campaign are also relevant here. Make sure on both sides there's no restrictions that you don't need that could be prohibiting pacing from happening. Auto optimization. This is something that actually surprised me when I talked to my buy-side friends, and we talked about this in the publisher town hall as well. A lot of the tools that we're using now to run PMPs were originally developed for DR campaigns, right? So they have some kind of attribution that they're using on the back end to throttle pacing based on optimization. And a lot of my agency trading desk friends said, you know, Jen, I'm trying to run a branding campaign, but there's still some kind of auto optimization interfering with it. You know, I'm buying your inventory because I know I'm hitting a certain demo, but it's not running because, you know, it's not getting the clicks that it expects or some kind of attribution it expects on the back end. It's really important for you to understand on the buy side and the pub side what kind of optimization is factoring in that could be throttling your pacing. Security issues, right? The page is secure, the creative is not, and vice versa. That can obviously cause issues. And then finally, on the publisher side, again, while we're not in a guaranteed environment, we need to make sure that there's some availability for this inventory, or at least if another direct campaign comes in and swoops up that inventory, that we're being transparent with the buy side and letting them know what's going on. You might have this being affected by your stack setup, right? I mean, we've got publishers here like us where PMPs compete against the full stack, and then you've got publishers where PMPs might not come in until after direct inventory. And all of those things can affect availability and seeing what inventory you're supplying to that PMP. So what are our key takeaways here, right? Understand the process for working with your partner of choice. I have to say on the publisher side, initially I was frustrated when I found out with certain groups I couldn't get to the actual planner who was going to be planning things, but now I understand it's like that for a reason, right? You can't have a planner being inundated with 500 publishers trying to come to them and make a PMP. So it's just important for us on the publishing side to understand why your organization works the way that it does and who are my contact points if there's an issue or if I need to escalate something. Make your inventory as easy to discover as possible. It was the #1 unanimous complaint of all of my buy-side friends, is discovering that transparent, brand-safe inventory that they can use for PMPs. And then finally, all of the things that I mentioned to you can be found on checklists. Every single organization that lets you run a private marketplace has a checklist. And 99% of the issues that you will have could be avoided if you just had your trafficking team follow that checklist from the beginning. So I would really encourage you to do that, because these little frustrations that are getting in our way are really getting in the way of something that's bigger, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you find your PMP soulmate, at a conference or via one of these systems. It's up to the two of you to communicate effectively and build an awesome campaign together. Thanks, guys. No questions? Okay.